You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record, baby, right, round, round. Oh, I think I got the words wrong. Hey friends, it's Jeffy G here. It occurred to me that I really have no strategy for drum machine samples. I reviewed all these drum machine sample players, many of them. There's a link to my extensive review up above and in the description below. But as I went through it, I missed all kinds of other drum sampler programs. And most importantly, programs that sell you samples with an instrument. Let me explain what happened. I was watching this video by Dr. Mix on the top 5 80s beats that everyone should know. And he was using UVI Beatbox 2, which is interesting software. It's been around for quite a long time. Claims to have sampled about $1. That was the price. And I was kind of debating, that's not bad. The player has editing capabilities and a sequencer built into it. I have over 300 gigabytes of samples. Certainly in that sample library I have, there's probably already lots of Roland 707s and Linn drum machines and classic drum machines from the 80s. So should I buy that package? Should I buy that drum machine application for 59 bucks, or should I do some investigation and see if I already have that stuff? What occurred to me at that point is I really have no strategy for all of these drum samples. I have several drum sample players, and I'm inclined to use Logic Drum Machine Designer because I'm kind of a Logic guy and I'm used to that, and I love the sequencer, the step sequencer that's built into Logic. But I really have no grasp on what I have. It's typical gear acquisition syndrome where every time someone comes out with like a new drum app or a drum machine, I go and try and get it and I download it and I play with it for a few days. Consequently, I have dozens of drum apps and drum software applications, and I really don't know what's in each one of them, and no way to integrate, the sequence from one, the patterns from another, and the kits from yet another. They all play samples. They all have that capability. Here you can see my sample and loops library. It's made up of a lot of different sources for loops. In fact, one of my biggest libraries is from the Music Radar website. You can see that's 64 gigs. So in total, I've got about 300 gigs of loops I've acquired. The reason there's an Apple one over there is that Apple loops come delivered in CAF files, which are not necessarily readable by all loop-based software, so I converted them to WAV files with a utility. Anyway, you can see there's a lot of titles and a lot of different sources there. I tend to use Logic, and in Logic, if you go into the clip browser, you could search for things there. So I could search for, say, 707s drum machine. Not much there, right? Try 808s. Oh, lots of 808s, right? Lots of different, so quite a list of beats based on 808s. I've got most of that sample library loaded into tagged loops. See here, if I do a search for, say, Linn drum machines, I don't get much. 707s here. Oh, lots of 707 related stuff. So it's just as a test, I'm looking for samples that I already own that are based on some 80s drum machine. Another tool that I've used quite a bit is ADSR Sample Manager. I've had this for years, and I found it to be just a little bit more useful to me than the Logic clip browser. So in here, if I type in 707s, do a search, there's lots here, you see. How about Linn drum machines? Yeah, lots. Cowbell. So that, sort of begs the question is, how are these loops that I already own tagged, and can I create my own kits from them? Another tool that I use quite a bit is the XO drum machine. It creates this cloud of all the samples you own, and you can click anywhere in there. And essentially, what it's particularly good at is this similarity feature where you can listen to, drums that are similar to the one you've selected, because they reside in the same area of that cloud. And that cloud is made up of basically all of the loop areas that I mentioned to you. So there's a good 100,000 or more loops plus the 8,000 that come with XO. And when you search, down here you can decide whether all those libraries are included in your search or not. Now, it's a sequencer as well. If you go into the edit mode, you can change a lot of things. Like you can modify any individual sound, and you can control things like the pan and the pitch, tone, cut, things you would expect. And over to the right, it shows you the sequencer. Now, the sequencer is okay. It has a different take on sequencing. So it has this thing called beat combiner where you can choose different variations on a beat. The idea here is that XO has an AI engine that finds similar things, similar beats to what you might be creating, and you can lock or unlock each one of those drums and then click on this random button down at the bottom. So click on random altogether, it'll just give you a whole new beat. And then over to the right here in the sequencer, you kind of see what that sequence looks like, and you can modify the sequence if you want by turning things off and on. The most valuable feature in XO is really the browsing capabilities. When you go back to that space that represents the entire cloud of things that you're looking for, it's just a good way to, find the samples that you're looking for. But I am more used to typing in search criteria. I could type in, say, 707, and then it limits your cloud to just those samples that have a 707 in the title. See if it has anything for Lin. Yeah, there's stuff that is tagged with the Lin drum machine. So this is a good way to find everything, but then the next step is I got to create my own kits. And I'm just going to show you how I would do that in Logic. I've got a track here with Drum Machine Designer. I'll pull up Drum Machine Designer, go to the kit controls. I will just clear all the pads in this kit. So I'm starting from scratch. I'll fire up the clip browser because that was sort of the easiest way to find loops. I could just drag them from XO or from ADSR Sample Manager, but just for the purposes of the demo, I'm just gonna, so I'm in the untagged loops, which are all the ones that I have. And here we go. We got lots of different things. So I could, drag a kick over there and switch it to pad controls here. Drag a snare. Can drag some toms, I guess. A tom, another tom. A little bit tedious. Stick that over there. Cowbell. Oh, I can't have a song without cowbell. There's a ride. I could use that ride. Okay, there's a pretty tight hi-hat right there. And there's an open one right there. And now what I've done is I have created a kit, and I could do further work, modify those sounds if I want using the Q sampler. And there's sort of two modes there. The sample itself, you can edit and shorten or adjust the basic parameters of the sampler. You can apply things like adjust the pitch and the glide, cut off, reso, basic effects that you would use on each and every drum. Once you're happy with that kit, you can save that kit. That would be the next step. And I guess as a strategy, I would prefer to use Logic Drum Machine Designer for everything, as long as I could get all of the samples and everything in there. If you think of the UVI Beatbox Anthology 2, with its 111 different drum machines, presumably those are all individual kits, and 11,000 samples, you have to evaluate, does it make sense using that? And if I did buy it, could I convert those kits into Logic Drum Machine Designer? That would be ideal for me.
Yeah, great job. That showed them clankers. Objective completed. Look sharp, rookies.
You can see how coming up with one strategy for all of these drum samples is pretty difficult. Just in my case, I have all kinds of drum software. Each one has its own technique for browsing samples, for sequencing them, and for editing those samples. Do I continue to use different software for different tracks within my music, or do I try and consolidate it all down to one? Just to give you an idea, I've got Playbeat 3, I've got Atlas 2.3, I've got Drum Computer by Sugar Beats, I've got all of the drum instruments in Native Instruments Complete 13, of which there's 10 or 12 different drum sound sources. I've got EXO with its cloud browsing, and I've got tools for managing my sample library. I've also looked at ADSR's drum machine and Loop Cloud. I've got both a Loop Cloud subscription where I could download hundreds of vintage drum sounds, and I've got Loop Cloud Drum, which is their drum machine, which allows you to pull any of those samples into a 16-pad sample player. There's a lot of options there to consider. I have tried to dig into accessing all of those sample sources and focus on using Logic's Drum Machine Designer, and that is turning out to be a bit of a challenge. For example, Native Instruments Battery 4 has hundreds of kits made up of thousands of samples. I have access to the sample library, but not the kit definitions. So to go through there and recreate those kits in Logic versus just firing up Battery is a lot more work. So I'm still on the fence about whether it makes sense to buy something like the UVI Beatbox Anthology 2. Of course, everybody's product works best with their curated sample. And when you try to find one standard way to execute a strategy for managing all those samples, you run into barriers. Maybe you're like me. You have no overall strategy for managing all your drum beats and kits and patterns. So I'm working on that. I've got some different ideas. If this is the kind of content that interests you, please click on the like button. It really helps out my channel. And if you want to see upcoming videos, click on the notification bell and subscribe to the channel. That'd be great.